What are the best loadouts against bots and terminids after the Escalation of Freedom update? Which support weapons have taken the spotlight? And what has happened to the overall playstyle of the game since the patch? I set out to explore these questions, and let me tell you folks, I've been having an absolute blast getting to grips with the chaotic super Helldive difficulty and the new challenges the new enemies have created. With that in mind, I wanted to share my thoughts on what some of the best loadouts are now. As always, this is just my opinion and boils down to my own in-game experience. You may agree or disagree, but either way, let's keep the comments constructive below. I will split the video into two sections, one for bugs and one for bots, and we'll cover a multiple set of eventualities in both sections. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. So, what are some of the best loadouts against terminids after the update? Let's kick things off with what are, in my opinion, some of the must picks for our swarming, skittering adversaries. With the addition of the Impaler, the Alpha Commander, and just the sheer volume of armored chaff enemies, this update has introduced Arrowhead, has created a meta which is very similar to where we were with the bots in the previous patch. An abundance of spewers and Alpha Commanders can be problematic unless they are dealt with swiftly, and when you're creating your loadouts as a team, this must be factored in, along with how to remove lesser threats quickly to prevent being completely overrun. I've found myself playing two different build templates, which I will refer to as backpack and non-backpack. Both have slight variations which you can utilize depending on what your other teammates are doing. For non-backpack loadouts, and due to the vast number of Alpha Commanders and spewers you can find yourself up against, I personally prefer to use the Autocannon or the spear. Essentially, to weave either of these weapons into your playstyle, you need to be efficient in switching between your primary and your secondary quickly to maintain control of the battlefield. If you're dealing with a large horde of chaff enemies and you see some Alpha Commanders advancing, that's your signal to quickly switch to the Autocannon and administer headshots. A well-placed shot from the Autocannon will decapitate an Alpha Commander in one shot, and this approach makes their threat feel much diminished. The same can be said when facing spewers. Grab peak physique armor and mag dump into spewers to dispatch of these acidic nuisances. The Autocannon can of course deal with charges if you shoot their durable spot around 4 times, and will also splatter an Impaler if you can get the angle on them and again mag dump into them. However, if you want to lean harder towards killing heavy targets with your support weapon, then the spear is a much better choice now that we've lost the ability to use the flamethrower to deal with these quickly. You'll be on Bile Titan, Impaler and Charger duties with this weapon. The ability to one-shot Bile Titans cannot be understated and really allows you to create space for your team if you're proactive here. Using the spear does mean we need to be considerate when picking primary weapons, which will dispatch Alpha Commanders. More on that later in the video. For backpack loadouts, ammo economy has really become a much larger issue than previous patches due to the abundance of chaff in T10 chewing through our ammo, which is lovely, and the added requirements to lean into more hungry but less ammo-rich weapon choices. With that in mind, coupling the supply pack with either the grenade launcher, 206 machine gun, or even the Railgun is an S tier choice at the moment. I just really hope Arrowhead doesn't decide to do anything stupid with the supply pack in terms of nerfs, because it's really the glue holding a number of backpack builds together. The HMG does extremely good work against Bile Spewers and Alpha Commanders, making this an excellent switch option when we're dealing with horde compositions that throw these at us. Use this weapon sparingly and make your shots count, folks, to be as ammo efficient as possible. If you want to be a little bit more spammy with your support weapon, as per usual, the grenade launcher continues to be an excellent choice as it can deal with massive waves of terminid chaff effectively and really shines on spewer maps. Once you've experienced some juicy multi-kills with some well-placed nade shots, you'll be converted, believe me folks. Railgun can also work well if you get snappy at delivering those devastating blows to Alpha Commander heads and of course stripping charger legs. This may not be to everyone's taste, but if you're like me and you enjoy the way the Railgun now devastates against bots, no pun intended, more on that in the next section, you'll feel right at home using this. Before moving on, I will quickly highlight that if you're using a supply pack, this does open up the opportunity to use the beloved Breaker Incendiary effectively again, as it negates the horrendous ammo economy that we now have to deal with since the nerf to mag carry. If you'd rather use the Eat, Commando or Quasar Cannon, then you open up the opportunity to use the laser dog and the jetpack. But personally for me, I found myself going against these choices since the update for the reasons I've explained earlier, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't still do serious work with them. Moving on to stratagems, if you're rocking a backpack loadout, your remaining 2 slots I consider to be flex picks, and this really boils down to what you want to do and how your squad mates are set up. These are Eagle Strafe, Eagle Airstrike, 500 kg, Orbital Airburst, Orbital Gatling, and Orbital Precision. I know this is a lot, but it's so subjective and down to personal preference when trying to lock these down. The Strafe and the Gatling have found themselves on the receiving end of buffs last patch, as we already know, with the Strafe gaining an extra charge and being able to do damage to heavily armored targets. It makes it an excellent opener or finisher for biles and chargers, softening them up for more heavy-hitting things such as the Railgun, Quasar, or Spear, Autocannon, you name it. Try to combine these together and you can get some absolutely epic results. The Gatling is here for the same reason, and the added bonus, it has an increased fire rate since the last patch and a 70-second cooldown. Both can destroy terminid structures such as spore spewers and shrieker nests, further compounding why you might want to take at least one of these 2 along with you. I would also say, folks, that since Escalation of Freedom, the Gatling just feels even more useful just because of the sheer volume of enemies and how quickly we can use this on repeat. Airburst is of course for niching into your bug breach clears, and 500 kg or airstrike provides you with the ability to do work to both large groups of horde and armored targets. Precision Strike coupled with a stun grenade can allow you to kite chargers together, stun lock them, and destroy multiples of them at the same time with some well-placed hits. It can also do excellent work on Bile Titans if you can bait the spit and time that drop at the right time. Now, my personal favourite loadout at the moment is either the Autocannon or the HMG with Precision Strike, Gatling Barrage, and Airstrike. This just feels really well balanced around killing chaff and contributing to dealing with any heavy targets. For armour, I'm incredibly biased. I always use light medic armor, and this has been further compounded by the new infusion booster, turning us into catnip divers, or light peak physique for that epic stability now that weapons such as the AC and the 206 are so favorable. For your primary anti-bug weapon in this update, I recommend picking between the Blitzer, Cookout shotgun, Adjudicator, or still the Breaker Incendiary, provided you are using a backpack. More on that in a moment, folks. With the recent nerf to the Breaker Incendiary, I just feel that the Blitzer is now the premier choice due to the way it effectively allows you to control the battlefield with its infinite CC. If you ADS against alpha commanders and you're close enough to get all the chains of the lightning to hit with maximum damage, you can decapitate them in one shot. So this pairs really well if you're looking to run something like the Spear, which prevents you from being able to deal with these as easily as, say, the Autocannon. The Cookout shotgun fills a similar role to the Blitzer in that it can deal with horde extremely well. It has incredible knockback and makes for a really swashbuckling, bullying style of play. Just be sure to use the reload tech by tapping reload between each shot so you're effectively chaining your shots for maximum DPS efficiency. Where the Cookout beats the Blitzer though is its ability to deal with flappies. If you can gain a hit with this weapon, it will set them on fire and fire damage will drain their HP away, sending them crashing to the ground. And this is a similar story for hunters and warriors. The recently buffed Adjudicator is still an absolute monster in my opinion, dealing with most terminid chaff with ease. If you like assault rifles, this would be the way to go, folks. It's particularly impressive against commanders with its medium armor pen, and hunters just melt against this thing. I would recommend that you run the Adjudicator when you're playing a build with a supply pack. Even though it's had a mag increase, it still feels a little uneconomic in the ammo department. Pairing with the Railgun to it as it does serious work against stripped charger legs is fantastic. We do a lot of loadout and weapon testing live on stream, and a lot of the footage you're seeing here is captured there. With that in mind, if you could take a moment to like the video and drop the channel a subscribe, it will make sure that you're notified when I go live, and it also feeds the algorithm and really helps me out. Thank you. For bots, this update has seen some of our weapons become even more effective against gunship engines, which is a welcome change, and the addition of rocket striders into the fray has meant we need to be even more focused on dealing with heavy armored chaff to be effective. In terms of backpack loadouts, the Railgun has found itself as one of my premier choices in this update. Fueled by a supply pack, it cannot be understated just how utterly devastating this weapon is once you get into the gunslinger style of play it necessitates. It can one-shot devastators and the new rocket strider with ease, which is incredibly satisfying and strong in the game's current state, believe me folks. It's also very strong against recently nerfed gunships, taking them come down much more easily than previous updates, and this feels great, and I fully recommend that you revisit this if you haven't already. And it could also, of course, dispatch hulks with well-placed shots to the eye. Once again, very satisfying. The AMR is also now back into my top choices against bots. I'm not really sure it ever did leave. It can one-tap Devastators, two-tap hulks if you pinpoint their eye, and now, perhaps most impressively, it can two-shot gunships, which is absolutely insane. And as if it wasn't enough, it can also one-shot rocket striders if you hit their hip axle durable spot. This weapon feels even more immense to play now. You can, of course, still take the HMG for its insane prowess against heavies once again, and much like the Terminids, the grenade launcher is excellent if you are accurate and fueling it with a supply pack. An honourable mention does have to go to the laser cannon just for pure fun factor, and whilst I find the aim punch in this game incredibly annoying, I do think that this weapon does deserve a look if you like that style of play, especially if you fancy taking the newly improved scythe for another spin. That can be quite fun, although I wouldn't say it's the most effective. Again, much like bugs for non-backpack loadouts, the autocannon and the spear can work well here. You're probably noticing a pattern, folks. Spear can shut down pretty much everything with an easy lock-on, and the autocannon with its mag dumping technique coupled with peak physique melts packs of devastators. All the stratagem choices for bots are the same as bugs, aside from the fact the 120, 380 and walking barrages are quite attractive if you're keen to go and deal with all bases. This is particularly useful against the new fortress sized bases. I'm also a huge advocate of rocket sentry and autocannon sentry. Bring these along if you're using things like the autocannon, or to be honest, any other of the support weapons, and these do absolutely brilliant work against gunships and factory striders and such like. Unless you're using the laser cannon, I would fully recommend using the supply pack as your backpack choice. If you are using laser cannon, then shield and jetpack are the way to go here, folks. Your primary anti-automaton weapon is going to be your plasma punisher. I often don't recommend choosing one thing over everything else, but honestly, I really do think the plasma punisher is probably up there with, if not the best choice here. It just absolutely crowd controls the life out of everything. It's ridiculous. The tenderizer, the sickle, the scorcher, the cookout, the jar 5 dominator are all highly usable, but I just still find myself defaulting back to the plasma punisher. If you're interested in taking a deeper look into some more primary and support weapon combos for the hardest difficulty in Helldivers 2, including some of the weapons that I just mentioned there, check out this next video. It's got you covered. Take care of yourselves, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next one.